The Trump administration wants nothing more than the Epstein story to go away. But during a Senate hearing, one of Trump's top cabinet officials was forced to answer under oath about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Scrutiny is coming from both Democrats and Republicans, and we might finally see one of the most powerful people in the Trump admin held accountable for his crimes. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick appeared before the Senate Commerce Committee to discuss broadband funding and department priorities. But the conversation quickly shifted when lawmakers started to ask about Lutnick's ties with Jeffrey Epstein. Here's Senator Van Hollen asking Lutnick questions about his appearance on Jeffrey Epstein's island.
Lutnick, um, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it.
Just because you bring your family to the sex crime island does not clear you of any potential scrutiny as well. Like, that actually raises more questions because in 2012, that was 4 years after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted for sex related crimes in 2008. So make that make sense. How can you, as one of the most powerful federal agency secretaries, not connect those dots? You think that all of a sudden you're in the clear because you're bringing your kids to the sex trafficking island? Really? Van Hollen then follows up saying that he believes Lutnick is openly misleading the American people.
Believe that you misled the country and the Congress based on your earlier statements, suggesting that you cut off all contact when in fact you had not. When you visited the private island, did you see anything inappropriate during that visit?
The only thing I saw with my wife and my children and the other couple and their children was staff who worked for Mr. Epstein on that island.
So nothing, he's saying.
And you realize that, this visit took place after he'd been convicted, right? I mean, you made a very big point of saying that you sensed that this was a bad person in 2005. And then, of course, in
You go to his
2008,
island.
he was convicted of soliciting prostitution of a minor. And yet you went and had this trip and other interactions. Did you have a dinner in Epstein's New York City home in 2011?
No.
So the information that suggests that there was a dinner with Woody Allen and Woody Allen's spouse at the Epstein residence, that's there's nothing to that. Is that right?
I actually don't know what you're referring to. There was, look, I looked through the millions of documents for my name, just like everybody else. And what I found was there was a document that says that I had a meeting with him on in May, I think, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Not dinner or otherwise, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
All right.
This stuff just makes my skin crawl. This man needs to resign. It is disgusting that he's trying to downplay his connections to one of the most depraved individuals that the country has talked about in modern American history, certainly in my lifetime. I can't even comprehend how many people need to be put behind bars in order to feel like there's some sort of retribution for the crimes that were done to minors, to families of minors, to everyone involved. And the fact that we're seeing people resign in Europe because their culture around being tied to these disgusting individuals is more scrutinous. Why is that not happening here in America? And it's almost as if it's just so pervasive here amongst people in positions of power that it's almost expected. And we don't hold people to the same level of accountability. We need to. That needs to change. Howard Lutnick needs to resign. Criticisms coming from Lutnick's own party as well. Nancy Mace publicly condemned the decision to meet with Epstein after his conviction, saying she personally would not have had lunch with a convicted pedophile. Nancy Mace is an insane woman. This is the same person who's been demonizing people like Sarah McBride just for being trans in Congress. She has made like a fixture of her administration around targeting trans people. She's a terrible person. Let's listen to her words right here.
About how that may work on Capitol Hill, but this was addressed at the White House today. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He has come up in these documents, and he admitted under oath today in front of Congress that he had lunch with Jeffrey Epstein with his family on Epstein's island. The White House pushed back and said he didn't do anything wrong. Having lunch is not criminal. What is your perspective on their response?
Well, it is not criminal. I mean, that is the truth. And I'm glad that he told the truth under oath today. As a mom, I wouldn't sit and have lunch with a convicted pedophile. I don't think that's something that I would personally do. But that's my personal choice.
Do you think he should resign?
No, I wouldn't go that far. He hasn't, I've not seen any evidence that he did
What?
anything wrong. You shouldn't just be fired because of who you had lunch with. But I do question people who weren't straightforward, who weren't honest right away with the American public. And what are we hiding? I saw some names in there of people that I had no idea would be in the files, who were scheduling lunch or meetings with a convicted pedophile. Didn't do anything wrong, but certainly you question, wow, why are all these people, rich and powerful and famous, Hollywood, et cetera, doing this? But again, my focus is strictly on the victims, getting justice for them, people who broke the law and did crimes. That's not Howard Lutnick.
Yeah.
That's not Donald Trump either.
Right.
You can't say that with a straight face. I'm glad that there's some scrutiny coming from Nancy Mace, which is true. And that's like the bare minimum, right? Is saying, yeah, this person's actually kind of weird for getting lunch with a pedophile. We should go harder on that person. I don't think it should just be something that's like, oh, that's a quirky trait. And yes, I think it's absolutely fair to say that he should resign when we see financial paper trails connecting them together and him very clearly not giving a shit about the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, does anyone remember when Donald Trump first called it a hoax with Lutnick in the background? Look at the way that he responds to this.
They're both very good. The two Kevins, it's very good.
Mr. President, is Vice President Vance hosting a gathering this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
Is he working on what?
Is he hosting some kind of gathering of top advisors this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
I don't know. I could ask you that question. Look, the whole thing is a hoax. It's put out by the Democrats because we've had the most successful 6 months in the history of our country. And that's just a way of trying to divert attention to something that's total bullshit. Okay?
So there's Lutnick right there, standing next to the president, laughing, and then getting visibly uncomfortable when he says the Epstein files are a hoax. Look at him. That's not the face of somebody who's willing to be transparent and just lay it all out on the line. This is somebody who knows that a huge storm is coming for him. The White House and Trump allies have tried to move past the Epstein story, but these hearings and the viral confrontations that happen at them keep pulling it back into the spotlight. The issue isn't just who met Jeffrey Epstein or who knew him. It's when those relationships continued, what officials told the public about those relationships, and whether the full truth is still emerging. And now, with bipartisan scrutiny, the political risk isn't just coming from one side. We are starting to see both parties move towards wanting to be the people that uncover these crimes. And that's a good thing. The Clintons are set to testify in late February surrounding their involvement in the Epstein files, which really is forcing Trump's hand because Democrat congressional officials have also said that they're going to want Donald Trump to testify for his involvement. And Tim Burchett explains here that he believes that a lot of people are going to have to go to jail before the American people actually feel like there's some accountability that's happening.
What options does the committee have in that case?
Well, for her, nothing, ma'am. I was the one that called it, made the motion, the original motion to subpoena her. I think her attorney's advising her, as her attorney should. You know, she'll get clemency and she'll spill the beans. And I don't know. I don't see that happening. I see maybe she gets out early on good behavior and does a humongous book deal and probably ends up committing suicide by getting shot in the back of the head 5 times. Because this thing goes very deep, and the people involved in it are very powerful. I'm still one of those that believes Epstein didn't kill himself, ma'am. I just don't think he did.
Well, Clinton's coming in. They'll give their depositions, we think. Do you know if they're going to plead the fifth? Have they hinted at anything?
No, ma'am, but there's a reason that they're not in prison. And the reason that he was in the White House for 2 terms and she was Secretary of State, because they are very slippery and they're very smart. And I think they're an evil pair. I think she's probably the brains behind the operation, but I don't think we'll get much on them. I know a lot of people wanting us to get them, and it'll be great clickbait, I'm sure. But I think when it comes down to it, they'll either bail or they won't answer very many questions and be very evasive and be very smug. Because in this world, there are 2 forms of justice: those like the Clintons, and for the rest of us. Everybody says we'll put them in handcuffs, all this stuff, all that's talk. The law's got to back you up on it, and you know, we got to define what those laws were that they broke, and Congress cannot send somebody to jail. Oddly enough, a lot of congressmen probably should be in jail, but the truth is that we're not going to. I don't think it'll boil down to anything, and that's going to make a lot of people mad. But I believe that's the truth.
To say that like this is a 2-tier justice system for people like the Clintons, admit that Donald Trump is also in that tier. It is a 2-tier justice system. He's right in that effort, but it is the rich and the powerful versus the average everyday person. If anybody was of typical stature in this country and they were in these Epstein files, they would immediately be ripped up by federal agents and put into prison. But the fact that people are able to hide behind their wealth, behind their influence, behind their network of people shows that our justice system is not about transparency and finding the truth. It's about how can they get away with hiding those that are in positions of power from true accountability. Here's Ro Khanna also speaking on the Epstein files and what further developments are to be expected.
Yesterday, Congressman Massey and I went to the Department of Justice to read the unredacted Epstein files. We spent about 2 hours there, and we learned that 70 to 80% of the files are still redacted. In fact, there were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason. When Congressman Massey and I pointed this out to the Department of Justice, they acknowledged their mistake, and now they have revealed the identity of these 6 powerful men. These men are Salvatore Navora, Zorab Mikoladze, Leopig Leonor, Nicola Caputa, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, CEO of Dubai Ports World, and billionaire businessman Leslie Wexner, who was labeled as a co-conspirator by the FBI. Now, my question is, why did it take Thomas Massey and me going to the Justice Department to get these 6 men's identities to become public? And if we found 6 men that they were hiding in 2 hours, imagine how many men they are covering up for in those 3 million files.
Incredible questioning from Ro Khanna, and absolutely true. He's proving that the Department of Justice does not care about transparency for the American people and letting them know who's involved with these crimes. They are a cover up operation. Pam Bondi is specifically in her role to protect Donald Trump. She does not care about justice. She doesn't care about giving victims the relief that they need and actually holding those men that are sex criminals accountable. She is there to stop any implication that Donald Trump is guilty. And it's disgusting that she's willing to do that so openly. Courier will be interviewing Ro Khanna, so make sure that you're subscribed on our YouTube just so you see the full interview where they're asking him more questions about what's in the files, what's to be expected to be released, and how people can actually be held accountable. Trump may want the Epstein chapter of his administration closed, but this is looking like it's going to be a pillar of his second term. And as we get more members of his administration testifying in front of Congress, we are etching into history those that were involved with a notorious sex criminal and those that tried to cover it up. This story is not going away. Make sure to follow Courier so you can get every update as they emerge.